Me versus my overthinking. Have you ever noticed that thinking too much can feel like a trap you built yourself? You plan, you worry, you analyze, and in the end, nothing moves. Here's the paradox. Most people believe overthinking keeps them safe, but it's actually the thing that keeps them stuck. Miyamoto Musashi didn't have that luxury. Every second mattered, and hesitation could cost his life. Yet the most brilliant thing he ever did wasn't swinging a sword. It was mastering his own mind. Imagine having the clarity to act decisively, even when chaos surrounds you. That's not just for samurais or historical legends, it's something anyone can learn. Today, you'll discover strategies used by a man who faced real duels and lived to teach, showing how you can finally silence the noise, stop spinning in circles, and start moving toward what really matters. It's a path that's counterintuitive, powerful, and surprisingly simple, if you're willing to step onto it. By the end of this video, you won't just understand overthinking. You'll have a practical toolkit to turn it from a mental trap into a source of strength. And the best part? These aren't vague concepts. They're lessons you can apply today, starting with small shifts that compound into massive clarity. The moment to start is now. See beyond the visible. There's a strange thing about the mind. It rarely makes noise without a reason. Think of it like a neighbor's dog that only barks when something's moving in the shadows. Most people try to silence the barking without checking what's causing it. Musashi's lesson here was simple. The root of your overthinking isn't the surface problem you keep obsessing about. It's the hidden layer underneath. That layer could be an old failure you never forgave yourself for, or a fear of being judged you picked up back in school. It's like a pond. If the water is calm, you can see straight to the bottom. But the moment something stirs beneath, ripples distort everything. Overthinking is those ripples, not the cause. The cause is whatever's swimming down there. A friend once told me he could never finish writing his book because he wasn't ready. But when we dug deeper, the truth came out. It wasn't about readiness. It was about fear that no one would care. Once he named it, the ripples started to fade. You can try this yourself. Take a quiet 15 minutes, grab a notebook, and write down the real reasons you think so much about a single issue. Don't censor. Don't dress it up. The goal isn't to sound wise. It's to get honest. Sometimes the monster under the bed isn't that scary once you shine a flashlight on it. And once you see it clearly, something curious happens. You naturally start looking toward the next step instead of spinning in the same circle. Many paths to the mountain. Perfectionism is the sneakiest form of procrastination. People tell themselves they're just waiting for the right time or the perfect plan. But deep down, they're stalling. Musashi's reminder that there's more than one path to the top of the mountain kills that excuse. Imagine if every hiker refused to start climbing until someone handed them a flawless map. They'd still be at the base, debating which pair of boots to buy, while others are already enjoying the view. Life is more like GPS than a railway track. If you miss a turn, it just recalculates. The destination doesn't disappear just because the route changes. I once knew a guy who delayed starting his business for years because he couldn't decide on the perfect niche. Meanwhile, a friend of his launched something imperfect, learned on the way, and now runs a thriving company. The mountain was the same. Only one of them actually started climbing. The magic happens when you accept that your first step doesn't have to be your final one. Write the first chapter, even if it's messy. Take that course, even if you don't feel ready. Apply for the job you think is a long shot. Mountains reward movement, not hesitation. And once you're moving, you might discover that the wrong path was exactly what you needed to reach a higher point you couldn't even see from the bottom. Cut the useless. Most people don't realize their mental exhaustion isn't from big problems. It's from 1,000 tiny, pointless ones. Musashi's line, "Do nothing that is of no use," is brutal honesty, wrapped in 8 words. Imagine trying to run a marathon with grocery bags full of both habits for a week. The difference? He finished a project he'd been putting off for 6 months. That's the power of dropping what's useless. You can try this with a simple audit. For one day, write down everything you spend time on: conversations, apps, thoughts, even little worries. Then ask, does this move me closer to where I want to be? If the answer's no, cut it. The first few times will feel strange, even empty. But that empty is just the space you've been needing. Space, trash swinging from each hand. That's what it's like to carry gossip, pointless arguments, and endless scrolling through your brain all day. No wonder you're tired before the race even starts. The truth is, mental clarity doesn't come from adding more. It comes from subtracting. One of my clients swore he couldn't focus on his goals. When we reviewed his daily habits, we found he spent over 2 hours a day doom-scrolling news that didn't affect him and arguing with strangers online. He cut. That's about to be filled with something far more valuable. Control your inner storm. Musashi believed the fiercest battles weren't fought on open fields. They were fought inside the mind. Anyone can swing a sword when the sun is shining. The real test is staying steady when the rain pours, when the enemy's shouting in your face, or when life suddenly pulls the ground from under your feet. The storm isn't the problem. The problem is letting the storm steer the ship. I once saw a man in a busy market get shoved hard by accident. Everyone braced for the explosion. Instead, he smiled, stepped aside, and carried on. Later, he told me something I've never forgotten. If I let every shove dictate my reaction, I'm not living, I'm just reacting. That's inner discipline. It's the ability to choose your response instead of being dragged by your impulses like a dog chasing every noise in the street. To control your inner storm, start small. Notice when your pulse rises. Take one deep breath before speaking. Delay important decisions until you've cooled down. Think of yourself as the captain of a ship. The waves can be wild, but you hold the wheel. Over time, you'll find the storm still comes, but it no longer decides your direction. And that's when you stop being just another passenger in life and start being the one charting the map. Learn from everything. Musashi wasn't picky about where wisdom came from. He'd study other warriors, artists, merchants, even nature itself. His idea was simple. Every encounter is a potential teacher if your ego isn't blocking the lesson. Too many people only learn from approved sources. The right book, the right mentor, the right course. Meanwhile, life is handing them lessons in line at the grocery store, in a child's question, or in how a tree bends in the wind. I once worked with a young athlete obsessed with improving his reaction time. He trained with drills, apps, and coaches, but progress was slow. Then one day, he started playing catch with his dog in the park. A month later, his coach asked what new program he'd been following. None. Just a game of fetch that taught him to anticipate movement without overthinking. The teacher was a wagging tail and a tennis ball. The trick is to walk through the world like it's a library where every person, problem, and moment is a book. Ask yourself, what is this trying to teach me? It doesn't mean every experience will be pleasant, but even the tough ones carry tools for your next battle. The faster you learn to collect them, the faster you'll find that wisdom is everywhere. And it's free for those paying attention. The rhythm of life. Musashi spoke of sensing rhythm, not just in battle, but in everything. Every conversation, project, and even mood has its own tempo. The problem is, most people either rush when they should wait or hesitate when they should strike. They're like a dancer stepping on every beat except the right one. Success often comes down to knowing when to move fast and when to be still. Think about surfing. You can't force a wave to arrive, but you can learn to read the water so you're ready when it does. I knew a trader who jumped on every market fluctuation, making frantic buys and sells. He lost more than he gained. Then, after studying patterns for months, he started waiting for the right wave. His trades became fewer, but far more profitable. The rhythm hadn't changed. His timing had. To find life's rhythm, slow down your reactions. Watch patterns in your work, relationships, and even your own emotions. Notice when tension builds, when opportunities open, when quiet moments invite action. The world moves like music, sometimes in jazz improvisation, sometimes in steady drum beats. The goal isn't to control the song, it's to learn how to dance with it without missing your step. Adapt like water. Musashi's life was a series of changes, from duels to strategy, from wandering to teaching. He understood that clinging too tightly to one way of doing things is like trying to hold water in a clenched fist. Life shifts, opponents change, circumstances flip without warning. The ones who survive and thrive are those who can bend without breaking. I once met a chef who lost his restaurant in a sudden fire. Most would have given up or started from scratch the same way. Instead, he began cooking out of a food truck, using the streets as his dining room. A year later, he had a loyal following and a waiting list at every stop. He didn't fight the current, he flowed with it, and it carried him somewhere new. To adapt like water, stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "How can I move with this?" Flexibility isn't weakness, it's a strategic form of strength. Water can crash through rock or carve through it slowly over centuries. Learn both approaches, and you'll discover there's no obstacle you can't eventually shape to your advantage. Walk alone when needed. Musashi often traveled and fought alone, not because he disliked people, but because solitude sharpens the mind in ways constant company never can. Most people cling to the crowd for comfort, but the crowd can blur your vision. When you're surrounded by noise, it's hard to hear your own thoughts, and impossible to know if your steps are truly yours or just echoes of others. I once knew a man who spent years following his friends' career choices. If they joined a new company, so did he. If they invested in something, he copied them. But one year, a move to a distant city forced him to live without their influence. Alone, he realized he'd never actually chosen his own path. That year of solitude didn't make him lonely. It made him independent. Walking alone doesn't mean cutting yourself off forever. It means being willing to take the path no one else is taking, even when it feels uncertain. It's in those quiet miles without applause or advice that you discover the weight of your own footsteps and the strength in them. Death is always near. Musashi lived with the awareness that life could end at any moment. For him, this wasn't morbid, it was fuel. Knowing the clock is ticking strips away hesitation and forces you to focus on what matters. When people act like they have forever, they waste years on grudges, distractions, and fears that won't matter in the end. I once spoke to an elderly man who said his only regret was assuming there would always be time later. He put off learning guitar, traveling, even telling certain people how much they meant to him. Later never came for some of those things. The finality in his voice was more powerful than any motivational speech I'd heard. When you live with the awareness of death, you stop treating time like an endless, refillable glass. You start saying what you mean, cutting the trivial, and acting today instead of waiting for someday. The point isn't to fear death. It's to let it remind you that every morning is a limited edition. Once you grasp that, you stop sleepwalking through life and start walking like every step matters. Train daily, even in small ways. Musashi didn't become a master overnight. Every day he honed his sword, his mind, and his instincts. Mastery isn't magic. It's repetition, patience, and a refusal to quit. Small, consistent efforts compound like drops of water carving a canyon over years. Most people underestimate these tiny actions, but they're the ones that build unshakable strength. I once worked with a writer who struggled to finish anything. I told him, write one paragraph every morning, no matter how small. At first, he laughed. It seemed insignificant. 6 months later, that single paragraph a day became a full manuscript. He didn't wait for inspiration or perfect conditions. He trained, and the results followed naturally. Daily practice doesn't have to be monumental. Meditation for 10 minutes, reviewing your goals, a short workout, or reading a page a day. These small, consistent efforts strengthen both mind and body. Musashi's lesson is clear. Progress is a process. You don't need to leap mountains at once. You only need to take the next step every single day, and eventually the mountain becomes yours.